Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my February marked as to read video. In the month of February, I marked a total of 12 books as to read on Goodreads, which is actually a pretty low number for me. It was a pretty reserved month for marking books as to read. So let's jump straight in and talk about all 12 books that I was inspired to mark as to read on Goodreads in the month of February. So the first 3 books that I want to talk about are all books that I heard about over on Lisa from Books and Smiles channel. The first of those is Guilty by Laura Elliott. This is an adult thriller, and I believe it focuses on a teenage girl who goes missing, and then I think a reporter reports that the girl's uncle is the main suspect or is responsible or whatever, and then I think it's set a few years later, and it follows both the uncle, who was reported as being the main suspect, and how it's affected his life, and I think it also follows the reporter and what's going on with that situation. So that just sounded really, really interesting, and something that, I don't know, I just really like thrillers. In case, if you haven't watched my channel, I get inspired, basically any thriller I ever hear about I want to read. The next one is The Secret Mother by Shalini Boland, which I actually managed to get a free copy of on Amazon in the month as well, so that was also in my book haul. This one is an adult thriller as well, about a little boy turns up in this woman's house and he thinks that she's his mother, but she's not his mother. I don't know anything about it apart from that, but it just sounds really, really intriguing. And the third one that I marked as to read is I Have No Secrets by Penny Jolson, and I believe this is about a teenage girl who has, I think it's cerebral palsy, and as a result of her cerebral palsy, she is unable to communicate. And then I think that it's about someone confesses murder to her, that they're a murderer, and she can't do anything about it because she can't communicate with anyone. That just sounded very, very intriguing, and something that I think that I would really, really enjoy, because basically it's a thriller. If you couldn't tell, I want to read all the thrillers. The next 4 books that I want to talk about are also all books that I heard about from Lisa over at Books and Smiles. These are 4 that I heard about in Lisa's video that she did on recommendations for hate to love romances. So the first of those that I have is The Mother Road by Megan Quinn. This is a new adult romance that I think focuses on a girl who goes on a road trip with her dad and her brother, but then her brother's best friend comes along as well, and her brother's best friend, I think, is someone that she had a crush on all through her childhood and who broke her heart at some point. So obviously we're going to be dealing with that whole situation. The next one is Anything You Can Do by R.S. Gray. R.S. Gray is an author that I've heard a bit about. I think this author is quite prominent within the new adult kind of genre. So this is another new adult romance, and I believe this one is about high school rivals, so a guy and a girl who were arch enemies in high school, and who I think both end up moving back to their small town that they grew up in, and then are now rivals once again, I think, in the company that they work for. And obviously it's going to have some hate to love romance stuff going on in there. I also have Egomaniac by Vi Keeland. This is another new adult romance. This one, I believe, is about a girl who rents some office space, but then when she gets there, it turns out that it's actually this guy's office, and that she's been the victim of a scam, but he lets her share the office space, or as his secretary, lets her help out as his secretary while the situation is sorted out or something. And then obviously romance is going to ensue from there. And the final one from that hate to love recommendations video is it's got a kind of a strange name, The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. I presume Winnipeg is a place, because this one is a new adult sports romance, and it's about a girl who is, I think she's the assistant to an NFL player, so I presume The Wall of Winnipeg is a name, his sporting nickname, because I presume he's going to be a wall, in NFL speak, and Winnipeg is maybe the place where the team's from. I don't really know. Let's not pretend I know anything about American football. So those are the 4 that I got recommended through that video. I do love a bit of hate to love romance trope. I like basically every romance trope that there is, and I really don't read much new adult romance, so these are all sound like interesting ones to pick up. The next one is a book that I actually have heard about, but I had never marked as to read, and that is Till Death by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I actually saw, you guessed it, Lisa, she put this on a TBR that she was doing, and it reminded me about it because I actually have read quite a few books by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I quite enjoy her writing, and I haven't read anything. This is a adult romantic suspense, I believe, and I haven't read anything. Well, I don't think I've read anything adult from JLA. I've only ever read her young adult stuff, so I'm interested, and I've only ever read contemporary and paranormal. So I'm interested to try something different from her because I do enjoy her writing. And I believe this one is about a girl who is a survivor of like a serial killer, and it's a few years like after she's survived this situation and she moves back to her hometown. I love basically the trope of anyone ever moving back to their hometown. I don't know what it is about it, but I love it. And I think she moves back to her hometown and then there's like a new killer on the loose. Kind of a tropey, you know, premise. But I love tropey premises in thrillers. Basically, again, I don't even know if there's, I can't even think off the top of my head of a trope that I don't like. Basically, any kind of trope, I'm into it. I'm just all about that tropey cliche life. Next, I have two books that Lisa talked about in a video that she did on unpopular books that she really enjoyed. In case you couldn't tell, I get a lot of recommendations from Lisa. She just talks about so many books that are the type of books that I'm really interested in, so, you know, what can I say? So the first of those is Things You Won't Say by Sarah Pekkanen. This is a women's fiction, I think, but like a dramatic women's fiction, and I think this is about a woman and her husband is a police officer, and I think one day like there's a shooting and he's not injured but his partner, I'm not sure if his partner is injured or killed, and her husband has been really struggling to deal with this, and then there is another shooting but her husband is actually the perpetrator, so it's dealing with a lot of, like, I think it's going to be some really interesting issues dealt with in there. It just sounds like it's going to be, I think it will be difficult to read, but it just sounds quite interesting. And the second one from that video is The Drowning Girls by Paula Trick-DeBoard. I actually think I have another book by Paula Trick-DeBoard that I've marked as to read. I think she has written a few adult thrillers that just sound really interesting to me. This one is about a woman who I think moves to a like gated community. And I don't know too much about it except that I think it's just going to have the gated community. There's some like weird, because it's an adult thriller, so I think there's just like some weird stuff going down in the community, like things are a little bit sinister. I don't really know, but that sounds really interesting. Next, I have a book that Mel from over at That Girl Bookworm was talking about on her channel, and that is The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill. And Mel completely loved this book. And then when I had a look at it on Goodreads, I saw that a lot of the people I'm friends with on Goodreads have given this 4 or 5 stars. And I was like, oh, I don't know how, but this book has just flown completely under the radar for me. I'd never really heard of it. So I think it's an adult book, but it's a historical magical realism, I think. And it follows 2 orphans who I think are in love, like they've been in love like their whole lives basically, and I think it's just kind of following their lives, but obviously it's got this magical realism aspect to it, so I'm not sure how that's going to come to play in the story. But like I said, a lot of people that I follow have read this and really loved it, so that immediately intrigued me. And the final book that I marked as to read in the month of February is Gods in Alabama by Jocelyn Jackson. So this is the debut book by Jocelyn Jackson. I recently read her book The Almost Sisters and really, really enjoyed it. So I want to go back and read some of her previous releases. And so I had a look into her very first book and it sounded really interesting. I'm actually going to read you the synopsis that I found for it. So it says, when Arlene Fleet headed off to college in Chicago, she made 3 promises to God. She would never again lie, never fornicate outside of marriage, and never ever go back to her tiny hometown of Posset, Alabama, the 4th rack of hell. All God had to do in exchange was to make sure the body of high school quarterback Jim Beverly was never found. 10 years later, Arlene has kept her promises, but an old schoolmate has recently turned asking a lot of questions, and now Arlene's African-American boyfriend has given her a tough ultimatum: introduce him to her family or he's gone. As she prepares to confront guilt, discrimination, and a decade of deception, Arlene is about to discover just how far she will go to find redemption and love. So I was immediately intrigued by this. That whole part of the synopsis about that she wanted like the body of this guy from high school to never be found, that is immediately intriguing. And then it seems like it's also going to deal with some like racism issues with her having an African American boyfriend, and that is a prominent factor in the book The Almost Sisters that I read by her, that I really enjoyed all her commentary on racism and privilege and things like that. So it seems like this book is also going to deal with those issues, and it has like an added element about this whole interesting fact with a dead body and it being 10 years later and this mystery from high school. And it just sounded like something that I would really enjoy. And like I said, I enjoyed her other books, so I do want to read this previous release because it also sounds like it'll be really interesting. So those are all of the books that I marked as to read in the month of February. If you've read any of these books and have any thoughts on them, I would love to know in the comments down below, or any books that you have seen around abouts in the month of February or any time really that you've been really intrigued by and have been marking as to read. I would love to know that as well. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. But that's all I've got for this video today. Bye guys!